Jam Global Radio. This is Clarity.
It's for the people who are wondering why we're in the streets and we're outraged. It's basically a rundown of what's happened, and this is recent. And it's if you run, you die. Hashtag Walter Scott. If you stay and get arrested, you die. Hashtag Freddie Gray. Lay down while handcuffed, you die. Hashtag Eric Harris. Hashtag Oscar Grant. If you fight back, you die. Hashtag Trayvon Martin. If you mind your business, you die. Hashtag John Crawford. Put your hands up, you die. Hashtag Mike Brown. Proclaim your innocence, you die. Hashtag Eric Garner. Getting married, you die. Hashtag Sean Bell. Pan-sagging, you die. Hashtag Irvin Edwards. Beg for your life, you die. Hashtag Thaddeus McCarroll. Hashtag Cedric Barty. Just alive at 12 years old outside playing, you die. Hashtag Tamir Rice. Be outside, you die. Hashtag Rekia Boyd. Be at home chilling, you die. Hashtag Katherine Johnston. Run into your home, you die. Hashtag Ramarley Graham. Injured asking for help, you die. Hashtag Jonathan Farrell. Be in a stairwell, you die. Hashtag Akai Gurley. Smoke a cigarette, you die. Hashtag Sandra Bland.
Wow. I want to say a big good evening going out to everybody right across the capital as you join me, Kevin Julian, on Issues Today.
Already did my time. I paid for my
as we start off with Black History Month in the United States and Canada.
time. I paid for my crime.
We've got a show of absolutely extreme challenging proportions. Along with my regular sidekick, co-host, shotgun rider, the ever-present, always willing Dr. David Remay.
Already did my time. I paid
from the Team Den Mother and the Issues Today production team. We have Den Mom who will bring us the news roundup.
Back in the day, I didn't really care.
We also have a very special guest,
survival.
Ex-LAPD law enforcement officer Alex Salazar,
I was too young and foolish.
veteran police brutality activist and campaigner.
Man, I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick.
But our very, very special guest tonight,
Women, I had
with a story
street. I was
of gigantic proportions
sweet.
that will pull on your heartstrings
rearranged.
and bring you to the reality
Gun in my hand. It ain't about
of It Could Have Been You.
life is too short.
Antoinette Houston joins us tonight
Try
and tells us a very amazing story.
already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
And we've got so much to give you on today's show that we're not going to stay too long on this. I'd like to bring straight in, first and foremost, my very, very special and honoured guest, Dr. David Remay, with the news from America today. Good evening, David.
Good evening. How are you, Kevin?
I'm very well, sir.
Well, you sound great. We had a big snowstorm in Connecticut yesterday. I couldn't see 10 feet in front of my nose, which means I could only see 1 foot because my nose is 9 feet long. But other than that, it's gorgeous today. The sky is blue, the ocean crystal. The waves are waving up upon the shore as they should, and all is wonderful and peaceful. As Neruda said, my struggle is harsh, and I come back with eyes tired, at times of having seen the unchanging earth. But when your laughter enters, it rises to the sky, seeking me, and it opens for me all the doors of life. And that is Issues Today. Now, what's going on in American politics? Well, first I want to say something. Flint, Michigan is the backbone of the great American industrial complex that made the super middle class of this country. People could move in off the farm with pennies in their pockets, go to work for General Motors or Ford in Michigan, in towns like Flint, save money, send their kids to college who became lawyers and businessmen and changed the world for the better. And what does the Republican governor of Michigan do? To save a few bupkas, which is Yiddish for goat poo-poo, to save a few $1 million, he wastes $1.5 $2.5 billion of our treasury to poison the people of Flint, Michigan, which are overwhelmingly African American. He poisoned their lead pipes. He poisoned their water. He poisoned their children. He poisoned their old people. He poisoned anything and everything that was black in Michigan because he doesn't care about black people. They don't elect him, and he doesn't care, and he used dirty, filthy, chemical polluted water to infuse the pipes with lead poisoning, and he surely poisoned them as much as Caligula and those other Caesars who went banana off their rockers because of lead poisoning when their wine was kept in leaden cask, thinking they were better than everyone else. The Michigan governor is whining and pining, and he is an absolute sickening individual who doesn't take responsibility. Why, if he were in Japan and committed such a crime, he would not only resign, he would take the rustiest knife made from lead possible and run himself through in a hurry-carry moment of personal responsibility. But he's not going to do that because he's a Republican, and those were black people, and black lives don't matter. Remember that. Now, how are we doing in politics in America? The same old carousel of clowns dancing in a circus, absent animals and nobility, but full of inhuman activists who whine and pine as they always do about President Obama, a man who they swore on their mother's graves they would make a failed presidency, and in spite of it, the man, like a phoenix rising from their hell in Congress, brought about civil rights in a more advanced stage than any president since Lyndon Baines Johnson and the civil rights laws of the 60s. He made it possible for gay people to have respect in the military and serve open and honestly, as did Harry Truman. And that wonderful thing he did when he said, blacks are going to serve in the military, and if you don't like it, take your asses and resign to Nebraska. And he did it. And you know what he did it with? He did it with an executive order. Hello, you got that? Executive order. They weren't invented under President Obama. They've been there ever since George Washington wrote an executive order creating the Cabinet of the United States of America, from which these Republicans sit their fat butts and preach to America as though they have some claim on the Bible that other people don't have. Now, let me give you an example about these Republicans who are running to take over the White House from the most progressive, decent, human, loving, brilliant, intelligent man since Washington himself. Somebody just signed onto their computer and made elevator news. Now, let me say this. The average wealth of these Republicans go from Marco Rubio, and if you don't know who he is, he's the boy in the bubble, who only has $100,000 after he made $1 million on his book because he wasted it. He wasted it on a fast speedboat in Florida that sunk into the salty waves of petroleum BP-infested Gulf waters. And then Sanders, $700,000. Christie, $3 million. The bully boy Christie, $3 million. Cruz, $3.5 million. That nasty little liar from Alberta, Canada, who Canada itself is happy to have expelled. And then Kasich, John Kasich, how a man on the government payroll for 40 years could accumulate $10 million and pretend to be the Nostradamus in the present is beyond me. And then you've got you've got this Jeb Bush, who had to bring his mother to New Hampshire, a 90-year-old woman crawling to New Hampshire, her wrinkles, why, she has more wrinkles than a Chinese phone book has chins. And bless her heart, and 4'7" of New Hampshire snow, and she's only 4 feet 8 inches herself, she goes and says, Jeb is so honest. Jeb is so wonderful. Jeb is so decent. Jeb is so wonderful. Why, Donald Trump, I wouldn't spit on that man. And you know all those black folks, those Black Lives Don't Matter from New Orleans? Why, they had it much better in the Houston Astrodome with those Potter Porties than my Jeb Bush ever had it. And then this is her son, George W. Bush, going to write an endorsement for his brother Jeb Bush. And I will remind you that Mrs. Bush told me at a private luncheon one time that George W. Bush was so arrogant and angry as a child, so overwhelmed with his own personal self, that when his mother once told him, "You can't have an extra cookie today, George, because you haven't been good at school," what did he do? He went into his parents' bedroom at age 8. He pulled down his pants. He pulled out his little pecky, and he urinated on their hot radiator, stinking up the whole house, just as he stunk up America with his lies. Now, Ben Carson, the doctor, medical reform, medical practice. How does Ben Carson, coming from a ghetto in Detroit, without 3 bupkas in his entire pocket of his entire suit, with only 3 pockets itself, how did this man, who looks like he's on an opiate himself, he looks like he's in an opium den with, I don't know, Coleridge of England in 1870, writing some kind of a Xanadu. He's so out of it, I swear to God, he's Lucy in the sky with diamonds. He's worth $26 million. $26 million when a doctor who takes care of children, who had bupkas when he began, is now worth $26 million. You have to ask why. Now Clinton, the big mouth Clinton, who yells more than she speaks, who can't understand that her sense of entitlement is overcome by a Jew from Brooklyn who happens to tell the truth most of the time. She's worth $45 million, and she's still angry about the world. And this Carly Fiorina, this witch from the Wizard of Oz, this witch who is the most bitter woman on the world. In fact, the 4 feet of snow I'm looking out outside my house is not as cold as 2 of her tents. She's worth $58 million. And then Trump, what is that noise? All right, then Trump, $4.5 billion, and his helium is falling out of his balloon just like a muskrat is evaporating, sounds which I won't describe, and smells which would make me pass out. Now, Cruz is on the hot seat tonight in the Republican debate. And why is he on the hot seat? Because he ran around in Iowa with his Nixonian creeps, and he told everyone that Ben Carson was out of the race and they ought to vote for him. He stole the election. All the Republicans are mad about it. And Cruz, which in Spanish means cross, is going to be nailed to it tonight. And Marco Rubio, that man who has more ambition, more opportunism, and fewer accomplishments than a rock moving itself on the moon, is going to get it as the boy in the bubble tonight from the fat bully Chris Christie from the land of New Jersey, which is no more than an island that belonged to Sardinia in Sicily and floated over to America. And then you've got the governors fighting the senators tonight, and you're going to have them criticizing President Obama for having the audacity, the chutzpah, the decency to visit a Muslim mosque. I think most mosques are Muslim, but visiting a mosque. And they're going to accuse him of loving up to the Islams. And let me tell you one thing right now. They did a poll this week in the Washington Post. 54% of Republicans believe that the people of the Islamic religion are out to destroy America, and only 18% of Democrats, I'm ashamed to say, believe that as well. But anyway, the Republicans have gone overboard with their putrid hatred for a religion that is one of the 3 that shares the Almighty God that Christians and Jews share also. Then you're going to have them talking about heroin. Now, where did this heroin come from? It came from low-cost production in Afghanistan. And how did that become available? Because George W. Bush's crappy war over there made it available. And then you're going to have them talk about terrorism and then immigration. And the last thing they're going to talk about is the economy. And why is that, my friends in the world? Because the economy is recovering, and unemployment came out at 4.9%, and wages increased 2% in the last month. And let me tell you, the last thing in the world they're going to do is talk about the economy and President Obama's successes in saving the economy. And when they do talk about it, they're going to deny the statistics. They're going to redefine the statistics. And at the very end, after they tell all their lies and people still don't believe them, they're going to take credit for it. Now, let me say this. In the Hillary and Bernie debate, 93% of Hillary and Bernie's views are coinciding with each other. So don't think of their personal fight as anything serious in the Democratic Party. In the end, they're going to come together. Hillary is going to need that youth vote that Bernie is going to get. And Bernie is never going to get the old folks vote. So they're going to have to come together in the end. Bernie will get something very important like Secretary of the Treasury or something very important. And Hillary will bring in probably a Spanish man from Texas named Castro, the mayor of San Antonio. He went to Harvard with his twin brother, who's now in the cabinet of the presidents. And they're going to do just fine. And the last thing I'm going to say is the email controversy. This week, General Colin Powell and Condi Rice were revealed to have shared emails that were later also classified as top secret. And that is no different than Hillary. All I'm waiting for now are those fascist neocon Republican morons to invite General Colin Powell for a 17-hour witness testimony and Condi Rice, who lied her teeth out over 9/11 and the CIA report on August the 4th to the president warning of Osama bin Laden's attacks upon this great nation, while the president cut ticket wood in Texas and ignored his responsibilities, no less than Admiral Kemmel in Japan and General Short, who were both fired after Pearl Harbor. So that's the way it is in America, my friends, and I look forward to Alex and Antoinette and my wonderful den mama and my best friend in the world, Kervin.
Hey, David, thank you once again. And I say that you just take a breather, get yourself a coffee, and let's get ready to rumble, because this is going to be one extravagant, excellent, challenging show that I know that you're going to enjoy getting your teeth into as we come in with Antoinette and Alex Salazar in particular. But just before we do so, let's say a big hi, a big hello to a very dear friend of ours, Hillbilly Jed, who's been a guest on this show before now and is listening in right now, and he's going to have some questions for us as we progress. But before we go ahead and introduce our main guest for today's show, let's go over to Den Mum for the Issues Today news.
Thank you, Kervin, and thank you again, David, as always, for your almost impossible act to follow with that news of the week. I swear, it's cracking up laughter, but at the same time, it's funny, not funny, some of these things, isn't it just? But now we bring you to the best of our ability to follow that, live from Team Dumb Mother HQ, our weekly special reports. After last week's episode on integrative journalism, we wish to reiterate our ongoing mission to bring you these special reports as a way to bring out news that is rarely, if ever, discussed beyond the headlines and to explore real lives rather than victimhood in a vacuum. Our reports this week cover a diverse number of topics that unify those ideas and issues today, continuing passion for all subjects that impact human rights and social justice concerns. As always, please remember to follow hashtag Issues Today or our Twitter account at Issues Today Show for tweets of the full articles on all of these topics and issues being mentioned in this report and throughout the program. So, in our continuing coverage of the Flint, Michigan water crisis, just one of many crises across this nation, we have two stories today. One is heartwarming and one is, well, less so. About 300 union plumbers from across the United States have converged on Flint to provide water filters free of charge to residents in need, which, we must remind you, is the vast majority of Flint residents. These filtration systems, as well as clean new faucets that were compatible with these filters, were donated by Plumbing Manufacturers International. While the filtration standards are not sufficient for the very worst water qualities tested in Flint, the union feels confident that a plurality, if not a majority of homes, will see vastly improved water quality and safety with these new fixtures. This was all accomplished in one weekend, and we at Issues Today consider this an object lesson in the impact that a small group of compassionate people can have in a very short time. And we challenge everyone out there in an Issues Today call to action to examine where your skills and passions lie and how they can make a difference. Please remember that the smallest gesture to you can mean the world or even a life to someone else. Meanwhile, on the other end of things, the effort by less compassionate authorities to detract from the magnitude and countrywide, if not global, ramifications of this Flint water crisis continues to expose the systemic environmental discrimination based on race and socioeconomic status, as well as the consequences of this discrimination. Despite the very real dangers that lurk in an infrastructure that puts the disadvantaged at incredible risk to their lives, insult has been added to injury by the Flint Police Department. Officers allowing themselves to be duped by their own department have been made complicit in adding to the misery of Flint residents by falsely portraying themselves as good guys, offering help with installation of water filtration systems. Instead of serving the populace in this constructive fashion, they have been using it as a ruse to serve arrest warrants. We at Issues Today feel that it speaks volumes that residents with potential issues with warrants and a growing distrust of the police and public services are so desperate for clean water that they are willing to open their doors to police for the mere hope of a water filtration system. It should also be noted that at least one article on this topic was compiled by interviewing arrestees and inmates currently in lockup. In the course of this interview, the level of corruption and lack of human rights in Flint becomes even clearer when we learn that while prison staff have been given bottled water to drink, the inmates have been refused the same and are allowed only the EPA-defined toxic waste from the taps as their only water source. It is, in our opinion, cruel and unusual to confine human beings, whatever their crimes, not only in truth but in limiting their access to clean water as a basic human right. Moving on to other charming topics in police issues. Suicide by cop should not be an acceptable method of self-harm, and the fact that someone in crisis can almost inevitably rely without fail on the predictably violent nature of policing to ensure their own death should horrify us. Instead, like prison rape, it is so enmeshed in our daily onslaught of news it has become one of those morbid jokes employed so often that we as a society don't even have to look too closely at the reality behind that dark humor. This week alone, are two mentally ill individuals who, instead of getting assistance from the police to help them live, were murdered instead, taking the chance for help away from people who pose no threat to anyone but themselves. In Albuquerque, an 88-year-old man in mourning over the very recent death of his wife was, quote-unquote, subdued by police with a lethal amount of, quote-unquote, less lethal force. He was reported as being outside of his home with a knife, inciting officers to feel compelled to fire about 50 pepper balls, some of which broke his fragile 88-year-old skin, followed by a takedown by a canine, which resulted in a broken femur, among other injuries. I should note that even at my comparatively youthful age, a broken femur is a very, very serious injury, and one that often does result in death, which in this case it did. He languished for a month before dying of complications from his injuries. Some officers on the scene of the original incident question why this could not have been solved with peaceful talk, and the medical examiner has ruled the death a homicide. In nearby Arizona, another vulnerable member of society, a transgender person with Asperger's syndrome, was killed by police as well. Little has come out on this story at the time of this broadcast. However, we will be following the breaking story as information comes out. So again, please follow our newsfeed on Twitter for updates. In further news of police misconduct and the justice system, other major topics of today's program, we have a couple of important updates to share with you beyond those few. Please continue to follow the Twitter for articles on these issues which we cannot explore in the depth that we would like to, and others from the past week. Police officers in Brookline, Massachusetts have filed an extensive, lengthy, 85 of I believe page complaint against some of their white colleagues. They report a wide spectrum of racially motivated attacks within the department themselves, including white officers straight out calling the black co-workers, and please forgive me, I'm just going to quote it, niggers. The matter is now under investigation by the Brookline Human Resources Department, and we sincerely hope it sparks change in what is clearly a highly racially charged atmosphere. At Issues Today, this raises grave concerns about how much respect and fair treatment the black residents of this area can expect from a police department that does not even expect their very own black and blue lives. In other police news, Daniel Holtzclaw, the cop now famous for his numerous attacks on women where he used his badge to commit crimes and protect himself from prosecution, was ultimately sentenced to a whopping, and in our opinion fully appropriate, 263 years behind bars. It is reported that he wept. Yes, 263 years. That's quite a number of lifetimes, is it not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It is reported that he wept as the sentence was read. Poor man. Poor man. But despite the facts of the case, it is interesting to note that some people and publications are still defending Holtzclaw and are also using tactics on those he victimized to put them on trial public opinion by calling them liars, among other things. Despite the volume and consistency of the victims' stories, some still defend him simply because of the uniform that he wore, and it seems to be more evidence of that blue line and the problems that an us versus them style of policing can create. In sad additional news there, we must also say that the Issues Today team would like to offer our most sincere condolences to the Martin family on what would have been this week their son Trayvon's 21st birthday. And the fact that people are continuing to keep the legacy and memory of Trayvon Martin alive seems to incense those who would also downplay and minimize the larger evil of things such as the Flint water crisis and vilify the families of children murdered by cops, all of these systemic abuses being so interlinked at the end of the day. It should be noted that the loss of a child is a loss to the community at large and not just locally or to the family itself. And the trend of character assassination after those murders is, in essence, a second egregious assault that reveals this deeper systemic evil that led to the death and eventually paves the way for the killers to walk free in almost every case. The facts of this one are that a teenager was stalked and attacked by an armed adult man, and his attempt to defend himself failed, though he did try. And he will be remembered as the brave young man with a bright future who was never able to reach his potential because that was stolen from him. And anyone who wishes to defile that truth reveals an evil inside of them that we would argue is more revealing than any other truth at all. This is the Civil Rights Movement, Round 2. And today on our first program of Black History Month here in the U.S. and Canada, we challenge each and every one of our listeners to ask yourself this one question. In the fullness of time, will history show that you yourself stood on the side of right? And those are our special reports for this week. Again, please follow at Issues Today Show for the full news on these and other reports. We can also be reached at issuestodayradio@gmail.com for any listeners who may have questions for the show, wish to suggest topics for other future episodes, or suggest to us additional things that we may include in our special reports. Please do be in touch. We sincerely look forward to your comments and your feedback. Thank you very much, Kervin, for this opportunity, as always.
Thank you very much, Den Mum. And that was the special reports from Team Den Mum for Issues Today. And just to update you on one thing, on the Daniel Holtzclaw, one of the issues that have really risen this week, and it's going around on social media, I'm not sure if most of you are aware of it yet, is the fact that his information has absolutely disappeared from the prison database, which means that nobody knows exactly where he is. And that's very alarming indeed. So we'll keep you up to date with that when we next hear from that. I've got a couple of guests that I do want to introduce to you very shortly, but it is Black History Month, and we felt that we couldn't do this without giving you an update. So bear with me as I give you a 40-second clip of something that you may not know.
Did you know that Mr. and Mrs. Henry Moore were the first members of the NAACP to be assassinated for their civil rights work? Their home was bombed by members of the KKK on Christmas night of 1951, but the assassins were never punished. In fact, they were not even identified until 2006, 55 years after the crime. So why were they killed? Because over 20 years of work, the Moores had managed to register so many black voters that their home state of Florida became the state with the most registered black voters in the U.S.
World Jam Global Radio, this is Clarity.
And if you didn't know that, then you do know. Harry Moore and his family were assassinated, and it eventually came out that they were assassinated by the KKK. That's where they think that's come from. And the reason for their assassination is that they actually accumulated so many black voters that their state became the state that had the most black voters in the whole of the United States of America. And that was an accomplishment, and that was our Black History Month moments. And I'll have another one for you for a little bit later on. But first and foremost, let's just say a quick hello to our very good friend, Alex Salazar. How are you, Alex?
Hey, how are you, Kervin, Dr. O'May, and everyone else on the show, and everyone out there in the world that is listening to this amazing program where no punches are held back or pulled. This is the time now where we really need to get down to the nitty-gritty, as they say, with these issues relating to law enforcement, to racism, and basically, you know, we're living in very dangerous and precarious times with this whole election. If that madman, for whatever God knows reason, gets into power. We're talking about Trump here. You know, it's a very, very scary situation where now these white supremacists, you know, they're not hiding anymore. They're just doing things normal days as usual. And this is what we're going to talk about here on this program with the story of Antoinette, a woman who, you know, was attacked and basically, you know, demonized for the color of his skin. And so I'll look forward to engaging in this very analyzing situation, the story, to really expose it and to break it out as it has not been brought out before.
Thank you very much for that, Alex, and we look forward to your interaction and your contribution as ever. And not forgetting that Alex Salazar will be with us at the end of the month as we round up our Black History Month specials, looking back on the shows that we're going to be doing throughout this month and what we actually come out of it. But with no further ado, it's been long enough. She's been waiting, and I know she's been nervous. She's also been very desperate to share her story. We have with us live right now Antoinette Houston. Hello, Antoinette.
Hello, David. How are you? I mean, Kervin, how are you?
That's okay. You can mistake me for David anyway. He's my brother. We're brothers from another, so we're good.
I wish I had your good looks, Kervin.
Oh, I just wish I lived by the sea where you live, David. And let's swap now. Right.
Yeah, well, if I had your looks, you could go out with Terry Hatcher and people like that.
Yes, and if I was you, I could go out with Terry Hatcher and people like that. So don't bring in Terry Hatcher because I'm already jealous. But Antoinette has got a very challenging story, and just to Antoinette was on her way home and stopped off for what I believe she's going to tell us about right now was a donut. So, let's just go right there, shall we? Give us the reason why you stopped off at the shop in the first place. Let's just go there first.
And tell us what state and city and all the details too.
Okay. I was driving back from a funeral. I'd been in Indianapolis all day. Indianapolis is about 2 hours from here. And I'd driven back from a funeral. It was almost 3 a.m, and I was hungry. So I just stopped at the gas station to grab a donut before I went in. I was about 10 minutes from my house.
Okay.
Now, Antoinette.
So for want of a donut is where this began. For want of a donut.
Yes. Okay, wait a minute. Antoinette, I noticed in your email you said the Commonwealth. Does that mean you live in Kentucky?
I do. I live in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay, in Kentucky. And for the audience in Europe who don't know Indianapolis, maybe, that's about, I think, 3 hours south of Chicago. So that gives you some idea where it is. Maybe 6 hours.
That's a long drive. Now, again, you said that you was on your way home. That's the reason why you stopped off at the shop. You was hungry. You stopped off for a donut. But you had been at a funeral in Indianapolis. Now, while at the funeral at Indianapolis, you wasn't there for any family member. You actually went there to support a friend, I believe.
Yes, one of the my extended dancing family from Indiana, her father died, and I just wanted to show support for them.
And that's what you did, right? You was a teacher. You teach dancing, right? Or that's what you did do up until this time?
Yes, I well, not for a profession, but just for fun. I'm a part of a dancing group, Derby City Steppers, and that's what we do in the group. There's about 13 of us, and we teach stepping and urban ballroom dancing to people. So that's something that I was very much a part of, yes.
Okay. I want to try and paint a picture for our audience in order for us to get an understanding of, A, who you are and what you're about, prior to this thing that took place that was to change your life forevermore. So the question I want to ask you is this. Upon purchasing your donut, had this thing not taken place, what was your next plan move? What was you going to do next?
I was going to first go home, get some sleep. You mean literally? What was I?
Yeah, but what was your plan for that day? I mean, you stopped off to get a donut. You were gonna.
Well, it was 3 a.m, so I was just going to grab a donut, which was probably the worst thing to do. Go to sleep, and then just continue on the next day in my normal routine.
Okay,
that I do.
And what I want to try and get from you now is what does your next day look like? What was the next day like prior to this incident? If this incident had never taken place, what was your next day going to be like for Antoinette Houston?
I'm pretty sure that was a Saturday, so that would have meant the next day I would have gotten up and gone to church. It's a tradition to meet my mother at church. I'm very close to my mother, so I would have just taken my son and went to church. We probably would have went out to eat afterwards, and then later that night, I would have danced. We dance every other weekend, so I would have went and to my club that night, our special meeting, and danced.
Wow. And then that moment, because we're going to leave that till a little bit later. I don't even want to touch that just yet, because we've got and David, I know that you're champing at the bit right now, but we're going to hold fire for that, because right now I want to find out a bit more about Antoinette Houston. What was life like before? Tell us about how you grew up, where you grew up, how you grew up, with your siblings, your upbringing, school, your career plans, your dreams, your visions. Tell us about Antoinette Houston and who she was and what she had become up until this eventuating a moment that took place.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm just a pretty average person, I guess. As a kid, very close to my family. We just kind of just did, the normal stuff that families do. I do have a lot of siblings, actually, from my father and my mother together from two separate marriages. So I actually have 13 siblings in total. So lots of brothers mostly, and just two sisters. So, and I've just always done things with my family and for my family, and that was just always very much a part of my life, just to do things together.
What sort of when you was growing up in your late teens, did you graduate from school? Did you go on to uni? Did you do those things?
I did. I went to school, and I did not go to college right away. Surprisingly, I got married very young. I got married when I was 17, and had my daughter like a year later or so. So I was a very young parent, but determined to be a good mother. So I got kind of jumped right from being a kid to being an adult, doing that. But it was okay, though. It was okay. It was something that I wanted to do. I always wanted to be a mother. So it was good for me. It worked for me. And I didn't start going to college or anything like that until years later. I decided to go back to school, and kind of after I started growing up a little bit and deciding what I wanted for my life. It took a while to kind of figure out exactly who I was and what I wanted to do. So,
would you consider yourself to have been a good mother?
Yes, and I've always been a very strict mother, and people who know me know that I've always done things like locking channels in my kids' rooms and things like that. Always really tried to censor what they got to see and be a part of and things like that. So yes, it was just, my kids have always been really important to me. I have two children. Of course, my daughter is grown now, and my son is 11. So I have two children, and it's just, they've been the center of my life from the time they were born. So it's pretty much all about them. But as I got older, I decided to start kind of doing some things for myself that I kind of missed out on by being such a young wife and a young mother.
That kind of makes sense to me. So growing up, values and principles were instilled in you from a very early age by your parents. And what was the qualities of those values and principles that your parents instilled in you from an early age?
Just things like to always be respectful, of course, and please and thank you, and yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, that kind of thing. I've never been around anyone in my family, my parents, anyone that didn't tell me right from wrong. I've always known very well, what I'm not supposed to do, what I shouldn't do. So, you're a very respectful individual, and more importantly, you also replicated those values and qualities into your parenthood, right? Absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to do make sure that wanted to do a step better and actually be an even better parent to my kids and give them some of the things that I feel like I didn't get growing up, and just I think I was a much stricter mother. My mother, she was so easy, but
I hear you. I know what those. I know what it's like to be brought up in a black family. I'm 54 and I still can't cuss in front of my mother because I'll get a right hand. As big as I am.
Absolutely.
So I know what you're talking about.
I don't either.
So
yeah, I don't either.
But in hearing all of this, that particular night was to change your life forever. But we spent a lot of time talking to you and getting some of this material together in order for us to be able to present the story in the best possible way that we can. Not because we're trying to manipulate or twist anything, but because we want to draw out the truth. From this, you sang with the choir at church for 17 years old, I believe, and on top of that, you're a very church-going, God-fearing person who believes in the Almighty God, who's worshipped with Him, and your mother did that before you. So you'd have been taking your kids along to church, and that's the sort of lifestyle that you was living, a good, an upright life, trying to be the best person that you can be for your children and respected in your community. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, I was definitely no angel, but definitely I didn't bother anybody. I didn't wrong anyone, things like that. Absolutely not. And now, I did instill in my children to do the same. Yes.
Now, here was an extraordinary statement you made when we had our 2-hour meeting last night, or whenever it was. It was last night, this morning, this afternoon, whenever it was. But here's an extraordinary statement that you made, which knocked us all for six. You said, "I never believed that police just harass people for no reason."
No. I've heard people say that the police are harassing me. They're bothering me. They're doing this or that to me. And in my mind, I think I just kind of thought, because they've done something in the past, or I might know a little bit about them, that they might be a little shady. So I just never really took it seriously. In my mind, I've never known a police officer to do anything like that, and I couldn't figure out why they would. You would have to bring some kind of attention to yourself or something, was my belief. So no.
Okay. I got to jump in here. I can't stand it anymore.
It was bound to happen.
It's bound to happen, and it's going to be wonderful. Now, let me say this, Antoinette. First, I want to thank you a million times, more times than all the nebulae in the universe for being here. Secondly, I looked at a picture of this Scott Sturgeon. He looks like he weighs about 270 pounds. And I saw a picture of you, and you look gorgeous. You should be in the Oscars. But they don't have many blacks in the Oscars winning, so I don't know if you'd go there. Now, the next thing I want to say is very simple. This guy is also in the National Guard of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Yes. He's in the National Guard. That means he's a soldier. That means your lawyer needs to go to the United States Army National Guard in Kentucky and report this to his commanding officer. Because I was in the Army, and I know that our behavior is not only judged by what we do on duty and in uniform, but how we act when we're off duty and out of uniform, because that reflects not only upon the Army, but upon the greatest traditions of this United States of America. So I encourage you to bring this matter to the commanding officer of his unit, which I see is 149th, blah, blah, blah. Now, the next thing I want to say is obviously he has military training. Military training has affected the civilian police enforcement of this nation, and joined together with the absolute negligence and misconduct of prosecutors has created a firestorm of bad behavior of law enforcement officers in this nation. So I want you to keep in mind, this man, if not on steroids and Mr. Superman in his own little brain, is probably influenced by military activities which have no place among civilians getting a Dunkin' Donuts or whatever at 3 a.m. in the morning with their 9-year-old son sitting beside them. Next, I want you to be aware that in America, in most states, I don't know about yours, but in the state of Connecticut, if a father or a mother so much yells, or anybody yells at a child, a teacher, much less, hits their mother, drags her from the car, treats her like a piece of old driftwood, a dreck, something out of a Tennessee Williams play 70 years ago. This is child abuse. No child should be subject to witnessing his mother being drugged from a car, being beat up, having 30 bruises, put in handcuffs, treated like dreck, simply because he didn't like the way she parked her car after he asked her to move it, and she so quietly. So I'm not going to mess around with the Wizard of Oz here. This man is a creep. This man is on steroids or something worse. And this man is a representative of this great nation's army, which I serve very proudly. And no woman with a child next to her in a country, and especially in a state that is as red as any crayon in a Crayola box, should be subjected to brutality, misbehavior, conduct, and I would say police brutality of a nature that is only subject to worse causes when he pulls a gun and fires the trigger on a 12-year-old in a park. So let me say this. You fight it with all your might, and I am so happy to see that the local press is behind you, and you need to stay behind it, and you need to go to your church, you need to go to your dance club, and you need to get them to picket the Army base where that pervert is reporting for duty.
Amen. And you're not going to be able to keep David quiet for long, because I feel it rising up inside of me. But unfortunately, one of us has to stay professional. So basically, I clearly hear I hear what David is saying, and it makes absolute sense. But just moving on with this, just before we move this on just a little bit more, your feelings on police, based on conversations you had with other people, were that police didn't harass people for no reason. But also, you was a very private person. You wasn't in touch with social media. You wasn't one that followed the news as such. So what was your perception of police brutality up until this moment?
Before this happened, I only, because I and it's probably horrible, but I stopped watching the news years ago because it was just all bad news, and it was a downer, so I stopped watching it. So other than Rodney King, which was, I don't know how many years ago, and Trayvon Martin, I didn't know of any other police brutality cases. I knew about those, and that was about it. I really had never heard of any other cases. And so for me, I didn't have any.
Well, one second, let her finish. Go on, Antoinette.
Yes, I know. For me, I've always respected police officers. Police officers have always been nice to me. Even if I'm pulled over for speeding, I've always been treated with respect, and they've always been nice to me. So I've never had a problem with police officers, and I've never had a reason to think that they were bad. I just never did.
Again, we're going to get to where this attack took place very shortly. But based on that experience that you had with police, it was also said, and I believe it was said by you, that you've actually dated officers in the past, right?
I have, yeah.
And what was your experience dating officers? Were they gentlemen? Were you comfortable in that environment?
Well, police officers and military guys are special kinds of guys. For whatever reason, I always end up with one, either a police officer or a military man. My ex-husband was military for 26 years, so I like structure. So I like the fact that they are pretty structured people, but at the same time, they're used to being in charge. So, you kind of got to get to that softer side of them, even when they're nice guys, because they're just used to being in charge. But other than that, I think they're normal people.
Based on everything that you said, law-abiding, family-orientated, mother, hardworking, respected in the community by all who knew her, supporting a friend who went out to a funeral in Indianapolis who lost her father. It wasn't a great friend. It wasn't even a close friend. It was just somebody that was part of the dancing class, and you felt it within your spirit to go and support that person on a 2 to 3 hour drive away from where you live, taking your 9-year-old son with you, so that that person can feel that they actually had support on the day that they were laying their father to rest. And once that day was done, you're now heading home to go and get on with your life, which consisted of the next day you'd have been getting up, going out to church, meeting your mother, going out for a meal. Later on, you'd have been going out dancing and teaching and doing what you do best, followed by the beginning of the week, which was son going back to school and you getting yourself organized for living an ordinary family life. And on the way back from Indianapolis, and we will clarify exactly what part of the state you were in. You can do that yourself as you come in. As I introduce this next part of the story for you, you stop off at a gas store.
Kevin, may I just one thing before you move on?
Go on.
I just have to ask. I know we did sort of discuss this, but like, given what you've said about you not following the news, given what you've said about your dating history and all of that, one has to imagine that you were not on any, even mailing lists relating to protests or movements or something like this. Like, so you've really just been thrust into this as a result of this attack, this incident, and it was not a part of your life prior to this, right?
Right. I used to be made fun of by my people in my family and people that knew me because I wasn't on Facebook. And my daughter used to tell me I was the only person in the world that wasn't on Facebook. So, and I just used to tell people, even when I have nothing to do, I don't have time for social media. It's just not my thing. I like to be home and nothing happening. I don't like for the TV to be on. Maybe talk on the phone, listen to music, dance around a little, but social media was a no for me.
Okay. And so now...
very private then. Very private.
A very private person indeed. And so now you're pulling into a gas station because you're feeling a little bit peckish, not hungry, not starving, a little bit peckish. Because let's just get it right: a donut ain't gonna fill you up, right? A donut is not gonna get you ready for your bed. It's not gonna bloat you out. A donut's a little snack that you go and pick up. You're driving on a motorway, probably feeling a little bit tired, and I could just do with something. And I know that because I drive around the country all day, and sometimes I've had all my sandwiches, I've had my flask of coffee, and I'm in the middle of a day, and I just think to myself, you know what, I could just do with something else, and I might just stop off and get a packet of crisps or something, or just a little cake. It's not because I'm starving, I just fancy a little nibble, right? So there you are, you're on your way back. Was your son asleep in the back of the car?
He was.
So your son's asleep, and again, I'm going to preempt you. I believe that you pulled into what was an empty car park.
I did.
An empty car park where you're probably not going to inconvenience anybody. And all you're thinking is, I've got my 9-year-old son on the back of the car. I need to just nip into this shop, grab my donut, get back in the car. Hopefully my son ain't going to notice that I've gone, and he's not going to be alarmed about anything else, and I can just get back on my journey and get home. That's your thinking, right?
Yeah. I was on the phone. I had been on the phone almost the whole ride back with the gentleman that I knew, just kind of keeping me company and keeping me awake on the ride home. So I did. I pulled into the gas station, and you're right, there was no one there at the time. And I was just on the phone, and like you just said, I was just going to run in, get the donut, come back out, and zoom. I'm back on my way.
Let me jump in to explain something to Europeans who may not know this, to others. In America, handicap parking is usually the closest to the entry of a store or a merchant's business, because you want them to go the least distance because they are handicapped. And it makes common sense at 3 a.m, when no one else is there, that somebody would pull in to the closest spot available to the door, especially if she was going to leave her 9-year-old locked in the car while she ran into the store for a second. So for the policeman to, I don't want to lead the witness, so to speak, but it makes common sense.
Absolutely.
That at 3 a.m, you are going to override. It is ethically correct to override. It's just like, do you go 30 miles an hour at 3 a.m. if your wife is having a baby? No, you speed. And if the cop sees you, he comes in with you. And he says, come on, go as fast as you can. He doesn't pay attention to the speed limit. That's the ethical and moral thing to do. And what this woman did should have been complimented by the policeman and said, you're not supposed to park here, but you're a very wise mother to make this decision to protect your child so that he is in your view at all times.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me interrupt you though for a second. I would never pull into a handicapped parking space if I'm not handicapped. I hear what you're saying. Yes, it was close to the door and it was right in front of the door, but I never parked in a handicapped space. He wrote on the ticket that I was in a handicapped space because my back right tire was over the line into the handicapped space. But I wouldn't pull into a handicapped space.
Okay,
I was beside the handicapped space.
Antoinette, you can't go to the Oscars with me now. You ruined my whole script.
I'm sorry. I know that's what everyone thinks.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Handicapped space itself, but that you were trying to park close and rapidly so that you could simply get your snack, get back to your son, and move on with your night and get some rest, right?
Yes, right. Yes, and I understand what was being said, but I just wanted to make it clear that I would never in a handicap.
So hold fire now, because now, Antoinette, you've pulled into this car park. You're gonna go and get your little snack. You're gonna go and get your little donut. And by the way, David, we still have the same situation over here in the UK. We have the disabled bays, which are right next to the door, and even next to them, you then have the mother and toddler bays, where if you're carrying child, is next to the disabled and closer than the other parking spots. So we in the UK we have two sets of parking spots that are closer to the door than ordinary parking spots, and they're A for the disabled and B for mother with children. So we have that here in the UK. We're fully understanding of that, and I appreciate the fact that Antoinette, that you said that you wasn't going to park in the disabled bay, because we're fully aware of that. We've had that conversation. But you've arrived into the car park. You're pulled into a bay. 1 second, David. David. Yeah, hey, David. 1 second. Let's just get Antoinette to get some.
Comment on the A spark. In America, we thought the A in England meant for the aristocracy parking.
Oh, hush.
Right. But watch this, okay? If I was to pull into a car park that was absolutely empty and I've got my child in the back, I wouldn't be thinking about straightening up my car and parking straight. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to pull in across the doors. I'm going to pull in across the bays. I know I'm not going in to do $300 worth of shopping and come out with a shopping trolley. I'm going in for a donut, right? So
let me just say that you see it everywhere,
absolutely
day.
So I'm going into the shop. I'm going to go and get my donut. I'm going to jump back out, get in my car, and get on my way. And that was Annette's mindset at the time. So please tell us what happened next. What you've gone into the car park, you're trying to put your car in. What happened next? Take us through it.
I did. Now, what I did do, I pulled in. I was very, very crooked across the parking space. I was like catty corner in the parking space that I was in. So as I'm walking in, a car pulls up, and I wasn't
an
paying
ordinary car, right?
Yes, a regular car. I wasn't paying any attention. I was on the phone, but I heard someone say, "Why are you parked that way?" And I turned around to see. I could tell that it was a man. I could hear it was a man, but he was so far away that I couldn't even tell, if he was black or white. It was nighttime. So I said, "Excuse me," and he said, "Why are you parked that way?" And I told him I was running in to go get a donut, and I'd be right out. And he said, "Well, you need to move your car." Well, I've got kind of a sarcastic sense of humor, and I think I'm funny a lot of times. And I made a joke, just part of my personality, and said, "Why? Is there going to be a mad rush of cars or something?" And I started laughing.
I would have found that funny.
3 in the morning, yeah.
I would have found that funny.
I didn't understand why I needed to move my car. And then he said, "Well, I'll just give you a ticket." And when he said that, I assumed that he was an officer. I got in my car and I moved immediately.
Did he ever reveal himself as an officer?
No, never.
Okay.
Never. And the entire time, he never gave me
So
his
you're
name.
3 o'clock in the morning. It's pitch black. You're out of state. You're on your way home. You've got a 9-year-old son in the back of your car, and you've got this man now who's standing at your side of your car, who's now shouting orders at you, and you have no idea who he is, irrespective of who you assume him to be.
No. We hadn't got to that part yet. He was still in his car,
right,
asking me to move. He didn't get out of his car until all I needed to do was just back up and pull forward to be straight. And as I was pulling forward, he started walking in front of me as I was pulling the car up. Now, when he got out, people think that he was not in any type of uniform, because that was also wrong on a few articles. He was. He had on like a summer uniform. He had on a polo shirt with an embroidered.
Was it clearly visible?
With shorts, yes. I had no reason to think he wasn't a police officer at that moment. Okay. I had no reason to think that. So I did think he was a police officer. But when he stood where he stood, I felt intimidated. And I did not want to pull up and get close to him with the car. So I just moved over a little bit to the right so I wouldn't get close to him. And I stopped and got out and headed for the store again. And I figured it was over. I thought it was over. I had already did what he told me to do. And when he got out, I could see that he had on a uniform, no problem. So I did move. And when I walked to the door again, he said, "Give me your license, you're drunk." I thought that was funny because I don't drink at all, and I knew that he knew that I wasn't drunk because we just finished talking. So I said, "I'm not drunk. I don't drink. I'll give you a breathalyzer, but I don't drink. My son is in the car." And he said, "Well, we'll come back here and see how you're parked." And that's where the handicap parking space comes in. When I walked back there, my back right tire was like slightly on the line, pushing to over the line, and that space was a handicap parking space. So he said that I was drunk for that, and I'm like, so I looked at that, and I'm still thinking this is a light moment, and I laugh and I said, "Are you kidding?" Because it didn't make any sense to me. And he said, "Do I look like I'm fucking joking?" Sorry, excuse my language. And I said, "No, you don't look like."
I dropped the N-bomb earlier because it was just a quote. So you tell the truth, girl.
Yeah, go for it.
Right. So I said, "You don't look like you're joking, but you know why I parked that way." I got confused at that moment because he was yelling, because he was cursing, and because you're telling me that I'm drunk because you stood in my way where I couldn't park correctly. So at that moment, I did feel that something was wrong, and we went back and forth a little bit about the fact that I would give a breathalyzer, but that the fact that I don't drink and that I don't know why he thinks that I sound drunk because nothing about me appears drunk. And I opened the door and showed him that my son was in the back seat and that I wouldn't drink with the child in the car if I did drink. So, and he said, "No," he just kept saying, "No, you're drunk. Give me your license." And it just didn't make any sense. And I told him, "Something's wrong. I need the police. Something's wrong here." And he said, "I am the fucking police." And I said, "Well,
what? He said what?
He said, "I am the fucking police."
He said that to you?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And I said, "Well, I need a different police because something is wrong." And he said he wasn't calling the police. I asked for his badge. He wouldn't show me his badge. I asked him for his name. He wouldn't give me his name. And, well, let me back up. I said at some point, "Why are you harassing me? I haven't done anything." And that made him very angry when I said that. That was one of the last things I said.
One second, Antoinette. What was his demeanor like? Was he angry? Was he raging? Was he?
Oh, yes. He was red. His face, he was sweating profusely like he had been running. And he was red. He had his hands on his hips, and he was very close to me. And he was talking to me like words, kind of like when somebody gets spit on your face when they're yelling in your face. He was angry. And I didn't understand why he was angry. There was no reason for him to be angry. But the more I just watched him, I could tell that something was wrong. He was just looking at me weird, and I felt uncomfortable. And when I told him I felt uncomfortable and I needed the police, and he refused to call, I decided that I needed to get away and get in my car.
Okay, just before we go any further, I need to bring Alex. I want to bring Alex in a minute. Alex, are you there?
I am right here.
Okay, Alex, I mean, I know we said that we was going to give Antoinette as much time to talk as possible, and we're still going to do that. We're nowhere near finished. We're still just skimming on the outsides, and it's the tip of the iceberg. But from a former law officer's point of view, from what she's just describing, right, what's going on for this officer's head? What's the reason? What possible explanation can be offered up for this the demonstration of what I can only consider to be an abuse of authority?
Well, the only way for me to sum it up is like Solomon said in the book of Ecclesiastes, there is nothing new under the sun, my friend. It doesn't matter if this had been Sandra Bland giving back some lip to this police officer, or this woman who has never done anything to hurt anybody in their lives. She's just a normal black woman, other than to have this officer who's speeding by on this freeway, and he looks and he sees a black woman there, and she crosses, a little bit over the line of the parking spot. He expected her to act like a slave, to kiss his ass and maybe to intimidate her or force her to having sex like this crazy guy who was going after these black women here. This man probably thought she was a prostitute and that she was scum of the earth. And so it's very sad because this continues all over the place. This instance here with Antoinette is nothing new, as like they say, under the sun. It has been going on since the beginning of history, where white supremacy has dominated and taken over. Yes, Black Lives Matter. We need to keep on saying that 100%. And there's nothing to say here other than the man's tactics were absolutely terrible. He did it because of hatred, hoping that he could arrest her for something. And obviously he had absolutely nothing. And the city, this municipality of Louisville, Kentucky, has yet to take responsibility for acknowledging, yes, this guy was censured for the language, the way that he talked to her. Well, really, is that what it was? It wasn't the way that he grabbed her and then dragged her down and basically destroying parts of her limbs. I mean, this is systemic. This is not an isolated incident, or like Daryl Gates said when the Rodney King beating occurred, oh, this is an aberration. We don't see this happening. Yet when I was trained, and I'm sure good Dr. Romay can concur with me here, it's all about having your partner's back. And one of the things that my partners told me when I began to work with them as a rookie officer in the infamous Rampart District was, you better have my back. If anyone runs away from us, we're going to kick their ass. We're going to teach them a lesson. You don't run away from the police. And so here was Daryl Gates. The whole world is shocked for the first time in history. Now we have this video of this black man being beaten up. Yeah, he's saying, oh, this doesn't happen that often. I was like, well, this guy is high on crack or something. But yes, this is not a shocking incident, but it's time that we open up, that people who are, suffering from denial, Uncle Tom, Tio Juan-itis syndrome, that they start acknowledging this stuff has been going on for the longest.
I love that, Alex.
They need to admit, that they have sold out their people, that they have thought that they are God's gift to the world. I used to be one of those individuals, that thought I could get away with things too. And so this individual that is absolutely drunk with power, to quote my good friend Cheryl Dorsey, to describe police officers here who think they can do whatever they want. And that is the crazy part that's going on out there. And I'm glad to see people are waking up and that Antoinette is on the show here to really tell her story. So I will shut up for now and just interject where I think it's necessary. Thank you very much.
Well, I just have a quick question there, Alex. And at the risk of the understatement of the entire broadcast today, what you're basically saying there, in short, is that nothing about this entire quote-unquote traffic stopping kind of thing has any resemblance to what would be considered a standard operating procedure or appropriate conduct for a police officer. Would you say that's correct?
You are absolutely unconcatenated.
World Jam Global Radio, this is Clarity.
He didn't call for a backup. There's a lone woman out in front. Okay, it's not like this is the crime of the world. Yeah, supposedly he thinks he's drunk. Why is he going up there, playing, police officer after he's off his shift and then coming off in the condescending way? He might have called her the N-word and drug her out and well, that's what he did pretty much. What am I talking about? So yeah, this was not at all professional police work. Unfortunately, this is how many of these officers are now being caught on tape, like the Sandra Bland case again, just talking down to these people, and then when they don't respond and start kissing their ass immediately, they drag them out. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And this is not the only women. There are so many. There was a female in Los Angeles who was kicked in the vagina by a fellow female officer from LAPD South East Division, you know, and this woman wanted help with her children. She was high on cocaine, and she knew she couldn't take care of them. And then the police went back to get her, and the way that she was treated, you know, resulted in her ultimate death. Yes, to jail, but again, you know, this is nothing new under the sun.
Okay, now from this moment, I want to take Antoinette back to a couple of statements that she made that I want her to clarify for us. Because two things that you said in order to explain, again, the alarming behavior and conduct of this particular gentleman, stroke officer. The two sentences were this, and I want you to combine the two as you sum this up. One thing that you said was, I knew he wasn't arresting me, I knew he was taking me. And the other one was, he looked at me with hatred and lust. Take us there, please.
Yeah, I was just, when we were still standing outside of the car, I was just watching his body language, and I was watching him escalate, which at one point it got to the point where I said, I'm scared. I'm going to get in my car and call the police. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to lock my doors and wait for someone else. But before that, it was everything about the way he looked and the fact that he wouldn't give me any information. He was looking at me like he was very, very angry, but he kept glancing down to my breast, like to my shirt where my breasts were. So yes. And I kept thinking something is wrong. Just everything in my body said something's wrong, run. So he just, it was the way he was looking at me. It was the way he was acting. I didn't think he was taking me until he actually reached into my car. But I got in my car, and as I said, I had told him what I was doing. I walked away. I got in the car, and he followed me to my door. And he was standing outside of my door. I just called the police, and he's saying, give me your license or you're going to jail. And I'm saying, I haven't done anything wrong. I don't understand why you need my license. I've done nothing. You're something wrong with you. I want someone else to come. I'm on the phone with the police. And I just wanted him to understand that I'm not going anywhere. Really, if you're seriously a police and I don't have anything to be afraid of, then why not wait? I needed to feel safe. So I got in my car and I called, and while I was on the phone with them, I heard him say, I'm going to tell you one more time, give me your license or you're going to jail. Well, obviously I don't want to go to jail. For one, I haven't done anything, so I don't want to go to jail. So I let my window down a little bit to reiterate to him again, I am on the phone with the police. I'm not doing anything. I'm not leaving. You're harassing me, and I'm scared. And when I let my window down, it happened so quick. All of a sudden, his arm was coming through my window. His arm came through my window. He opened it from the inside, and he just snatched me out of my car, just like that. And that I could not believe he touched me. I didn't know
what's going through your mind at that time? I mean, you're not a violent or an aggressive person. You even sound so subtle and humble. And now you've got a man who's aggressively pulling you out of your car.
It was nothing like that. My son woke up as he was at my window. I didn't realize my son woke up until my son screamed. My son screamed when he came through the window, when his arm came through the window. But so until then, I didn't notice that he was awake. It was just the heat of the moment. But I was in disbelief. I could not believe he came through that window and opened the door. I could not imagine why he would do that.
And let me just ask as well. You said when we first had our pre-show chat on all this, you had told him that you had a prior minor, but about a year previous shoulder injury and surgery on that side, right?
I hadn't got to that. That happened next. When he reached After he reached in and opened my door from the inside, he grabbed me by my arm. He grabbed me by my shoulder. So under my arm and my shoulder, he picked me up from a sitting to a standing position with one hand. He was very strong. He just yanked me out. And as soon as he yanked me out, I screamed and was like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? And I told him I had surgery on my shoulder a year ago. You can't do my arm like that. And when I said it, he just yanked it to the other side of my body as hard as he could. And he's gotten my head like up against my car, like on the roof of my car.
Can I just interject just for a moment? Alex, I just want to come back to you a moment. Are you there, Alex? Alex?
I am here. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, there he is.
I put it on mute here so I wouldn't have any background noise.
That's
Go
fine.
ahead.
That's fine. So I just want to rewind a second. So there's this woman sat down in her car, being confronted by this officer who's putting his arm through the window for a misdemeanor. I mean, even if it was an arrestable offence, it's a very minor one to say the least. And then there's a 9-year-old child in the back of the car who now wakes up screaming at the sight of this man entering a vehicle in a very awkward way, having to putting his hand through a window. What should have that officer done at that moment when the child woke up and screamed in fear of not knowing who he was and what he was about to do? What should that officer have done? What would have been the correct protocol?
Well, here as we begin to look at into the situation, the should-haves, the could-haves, and what happened, you have to be able to look into the mindset of that police officer and what's going on, mixed in with, what kind of training has this individual had? What kind of upbringing has this person had? What is his circle around him, the circle of police officers? And so, of course, as you start to approach this woman and he sees a child, at that point, he should kind of reassess, okay, there's a child involved here. It's time to back up and not go in there and trying to force himself into the location, which, again, to repeat, Cheryl's, Dorsey's comment that, these people are drunk with power. That is absolutely the problem here. They think that they can do anything and get away with anything. And so I don't know if that answers your question there.
It does. So now, going back to you, Antoinette, your son screamed, he's dragging you out. But let me just get this right. You're still on a 911 call, right?
Yes, I didn't realize that until it was all over.
Okay.
He snatched me out so fast. And I think it's really weird that he handcuffed me and he didn't even notice that the phone was in my hand. But he was so enraged. He was so red. It was so crazy. He didn't realize that phone was in my hand. I didn't know until it was over. But when I felt his other hand handcuffing me, and he started handcuffing me, and I was shocked even further, like, oh my God, what are you doing? And that's when he tells me, you're going to jail. You're going to jail. And I'm like, I haven't done anything. What am I going to jail for? I was so confused about how I could be or why I would be going to jail. It just didn't make any sense to me. And he keeps telling me that I'm going to jail, and I'm begging him to let me go because I haven't done anything.
But you've also got a 9-year-old son in the car. So what did you expect to happen to the 9-year-old son?
I was begging him. One of the first few things I said is, "Oh my God, my son can see you. Please don't do this. My son can see you," because my son was screaming, and he was like, "Your son's going fucking home of the innocents, and you're going to jail." And he just, every time I mention my son, and it just bothers me. Every time I even think about it or say it, it bothers me.
Yeah, it bothers me.
That he wanted to scare him that way. I'm sure he didn't know what the home of the innocents was, but I know when he said I was going one place and he was going another, that couldn't be good. He absolutely knew what jail was, and he didn't want me to go to jail. And there was no reason for me to go to jail. So I was begging him. I asked him a million times, what have I done? I haven't done anything. You were standing in the way. What was I supposed to do? You told me to move my car. I moved my car. How was I going to get all the way in the space if you were standing in the way? And he just keeps telling me all these things that I did, that I was disorderly when he was the only one raising his voice. I never raised my voice. I was disorderly. I was resisting arrest. I'm like, but why am I being arrested? What have I done? It just didn't make any sense. I was completely confused. I was screaming, somebody help me. I don't know him. He's trying to hurt me. Help, my son's in the car. I was screaming at the top of my lungs for him to let me go and for him to please get off of me and just for people to help me. That's when I knew.
Sorry.
That's when I knew. When he came through my window and snatched me out of that car, I knew I was not going to jail. I knew that he was taking me. Why would he snatch me out of my car? None of that made any sense to me for a cop. For a cop to do that.
Can you just clarify what part of his car was he trying to place you into when he was trying to arrest you?
He was putting me in the front seat of his car. He had
his personal vehicle. His personal vehicle, right?
He was pushing me. Yes. He drugged me over there by my arm to his car. I was screaming and yelling for help, asking him to let me go, begging him. When I got over to his car, he opened his front door and was pushing me by the back of my neck into the front seat of his car.
Can I ask you one question very quickly before you carry on? At any time while this was taking place, while he was arresting you, and there was a 9-year-old boy screaming or crying in the back of your car, while he was arresting you, handcuffing you, and going through this deliberation with you as to you responding with why you've been arrested, etc., and him claiming that you were resisting arrest, in any of that time, did he call for any help or backup?
No, I'm going to tell you when he did. When he was pushing me in the car by my neck, all of a sudden we started hearing sirens. And I didn't know where they were coming from, but we both heard sirens. And he kind of changed his demeanor at that time, and he went into his trunk. At one point, he went into his trunk and he got something, and I heard him on the radio saying, I need backup. But he said backup. He said he needed backup like simultaneously as they were already coming. So he did eventually get on the phone and call, but he didn't call them. They came because the 911 operator dispatched. She was still on the phone and she could hear, which I didn't know that until after it was over with. But she heard it.
I'm going to chime in for 2 seconds. I think anybody overhearing what, and all the rest of it, everything that I've managed to hear, any woman in that situation, any dispatcher who's used to that as a professional, would really have every reason, I think, to believe that it was nothing like an arrest, but in fact a kidnapping. I think, in my opinion, that seems very plausible. It
sounds like a kidnapping. It doesn't sound like an arrest. And again, there are two. Sorry, one minute.
If I thought I was being arrested, first of all, I wouldn't be doing anything to get arrested for. But if I happened to be doing something to get arrested for, I wouldn't act that way if I'm being arrested. I wouldn't be screaming help and somebody help me, I'm scared, he's taking me. I wouldn't be yelling those things out. It just wouldn't make any sense. It just wouldn't make any sense. I'm not crazy. So if I thought he was arresting me, if I thought for a second that things were okay, I wouldn't have responded that way. I responded to what he was doing and how he was acting.
I would like to jump in here a moment. First of all, the man is a law officer, and he produced a badge, I imagine. There are cases he never produced. Okay, but did he have one? He clearly is a police officer. So he said he had no camera on him. He was operating rogue. He had no witnesses except that camera, which recorded it. But in Kentucky, there are laws against this kind of behavior by a policeman and by civilians alike. First of all, he has taken her into custody. And in the Kentucky criminal code, I've looked it up, 508.100, a person, a law officer included, who abuses another person or permits the abuse of another person of whom he has actual custody, and she had custody, and thereby seriously causes physical injury or places a victim in a situation that may cause physical injury, is guilty of a Class C felony of 5 to 10 years. This is not a minor issue. This is a very, very serious issue. Coupled with his lies, it could become aggravated. And so it seems to me, and I think to most rational people, that he's not only guilty of a felony here in what he's tried to do to Antoinette, but he is also menacing her. And menacing is when a person is guilty of menacing a person when he intentionally places another person in reasonable apprehension, that is, fear of an imminent physical injury. And Antoinette obviously was very afraid that he was going to cause her imminent physical injury just as surely as he was putting her 9-year-old child in actual emotional injury. And so he has not only violated the laws against an adult, but against a child. And in Kentucky law, the Kentucky law concerning child abuse, any person, parent, custodian, or a person of authority, which includes a teacher, a preacher, a rabbi, or a policeman or fireman, a person of authority who has custody of a child, and he actually assumed custody as long as he had the mother in his custody, as surely as a bird in a nest is in custody when the mother has been captured by those who capture it. He is guilty of abusing that child who was in his lawful custody as a person in authority. So this man, which is a major felony, a Class A felony, so up to 20 years in prison. So this police officer has acted with a gross disregard of the very law that he has been entrusted to obey and to enforce. Now, I don't know why, but these are the issues that concern me far more than any other issue. The man has operated in a manner that is reprehensible, and he must be held to account.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree. And that's why I got in my car. I knew it. I knew something was wrong with him. I could look at him and tell. So when he put his hands on me, without a doubt, I knew I was dying. I knew it. I knew it. And it was not going to happen. Not that night. It was not going to happen. I wasn't dying, and I wasn't leaving my son.
The bottom line is, as we give glory to God at this precise moment in time, unbeknown to him, there were knights in shining armor riding to your rescue, unbeknown to you. Yes. Then you hear the sirens and the police arrive. And I want you to take us through what happens next. So the police, these other officers arrive. This man has kind of got you under arrest, so to speak. You're handcuffed. This thing has been going on for however long it's been going on for now. You're in fear of your life because this man is, and you're in, I would imagine you're in extreme pain as well because he's already subjected you to this ripping out of the arm scenario. Right, and you're still trying to make sense of all of what's just taken place. You're not long driven back from a funeral, having supported your friend, and you've got a 9-year-old boy who's been screaming, having witnessed a man put his arm inside of a car, open the door, and yank out his mother while shouting, "You're going to jail," and he's going to some kind of care home, whichever way you term it in America. But now, all of a sudden, these officers arrived on scene. And here you have the officer who's got you under arrest, and these other officers turn up. Tell us what happened next.
The other officers came. I was frantic trying to explain to the other officers because he just handed me off really quick to these other guys, and I was trying to explain to them.
One second. When he handed you off to the other guys, what did he say? What did he say he'd arrested you for?
Put her in the car. He didn't. He just said, "Take her, put her in the car." He was still yelling, and they were trying to put me in the car, and I was trying to explain. I was really frantic, and I was explaining to them that I hadn't done anything and that my son was in the car. I don't know how many times I said my son, and trying to explain that I haven't done anything. Somebody needs to listen to me. And they put me in the back of the car and said, ma'am, just get in the car, and shut the door on me. And I'm in the back seat freaking out. I still can see my son in the car. And now there's people everywhere standing around my car. There's police everywhere. And one of the officers comes over to me and tells me that my son is going to go to the home of the innocents if I don't have anyone to pick him up. And I'm trying to explain to him that he can't go to the home of the innocents and that I can't go to jail because I haven't done anything and I can't be arrested. And he's telling me that he wasn't the arresting officer and he couldn't do anything about it. So I see Scott Sturgeon walking by, and I start calling him over to the car. Sir, please come over here. And I'm asking him, please tell them I haven't done anything. They're going to take my son. Tell them I haven't done anything. And he's telling me, why didn't you just give me a license when I asked for it? And I told him that I saw on the news that if you feel threatened by even somebody that you think is an officer, that you have the right to ask for backup. And I asked for backup. I told you that I was scared and I needed someone else. And he told me that I had no rights and that driving was a privilege. And every time he said driving is a what, I had to say privilege. And I was very upset and humiliated and embarrassed. And I would just wanted to go home. Around that time, another officer showed up and the whole situation changed. And he apologized to me on behalf of Louisville Metro Police. He made Scott Sturgeon take the cuffs off of me and told me we don't all act that way. And he was going to file an administrative report and told me that I needed to file an administrative report. So he was the hero that rode in on the white horse for me. And then around that time, Scott Sturgeon comes back and tells me that the last thing he wanted to do first he told me that his job was really hard and that they had a really stressful job and that not only are people driving around drunk, that there's people on heroin. And I stopped him. I looked at him dead in his face and I said, you didn't think I was on heroin. You didn't think I was drunk, and you certainly didn't think I was on heroin. You hurt me for no reason in front of my son. And he just stood there. And I told him, he told me that he had a really hard job and it was stressful and all of that. And I told him,
Antoinette, if I may. Oh, sorry.
He said the last thing I wanted to do was lock someone up. I'm off duty. That's how I found out he was off duty. I didn't realize he was off duty until that, and I couldn't believe it. And I said, you're off duty and you snatched me out of my car over a parking crooked? And he said, well, I'm never really off. Police are never really off duty. And I told him if I was robbing the store or killing someone, I would expect him to intervene. But I was just parked crooked at the gas station, and you snatched me out of the car in front of my son.
Antoinette, forgive me, Do. I'm so sorry, but I'm looking at the clock here, and I want so badly to hear more about what happened after here, because I remember speaking with you, and I've got these quotes written down from our meeting, and just you said so many powerful things. I followed all the rules. This was so embarrassing to me. I just want to be treated like a person, and until I get better, my circumstances won't get any better. And you said so plainly, I want justice, and a lot of people are confused, I think, about what that means. And looking at the time, I think it would be so important that we were moving into the sort of what happens after. And if you could speak to that somewhat, no one can say it better than you can, you know?
Okay. What I meant by following all the rules, I went to Professional Standards Unit and I filed the proper paperwork, and I asked them, what's next. They told me to wait and let them do their investigation. And everybody was saying to me, because I had bruises everywhere, my arm was in a sling, I ended up going straight to the emergency room from the scene. And it just looked so bad when everybody saw me, and they kept saying, oh my God, you need to go to the news and you need to do this and do that. But I did not want that. I'm a private person. This was very embarrassing to me. It was bad enough that it was 20 or 30 people by the end of it standing outside. And I didn't want people on the news. I didn't want my mother. I didn't want my daughter seeing me pulled out of the car on the news.
Okay.
So I told them that I was not going to do that. I wasn't going to the news, and I let them do their investigation. And I waited about 4 months for the chief to return his verdict on what he did, and he said it was lawful and proper, and that he sustained
lawful
him.
and proper. Let me just repeat that: lawful and proper. That action.
Yeah,
Oof.
he said it was lawful and proper, and I didn't know anything. I don't know anything about the law, but I knew that was bullshit. I knew that that wasn't lawful and proper. I knew I hadn't done anything, and I knew that I could ask for the police. So it just didn't make any sense, and I was very, very upset. By then, I had already had my first surgery, and I found out a year later that I needed another surgery. So, but we tried to take a warrant out on the officer. We were not allowed. We were told that we had to follow the procedure and let Internal Affairs do their investigation. We did that. I went, after a year, when I found out I needed surgery again, we went to the Commonwealth's attorney and asked for him to press charges because this is a permanent injury and it's a felony. And we did everything they asked us to do. I did everything they asked me to do, and they still didn't do anything. And so then around the time right before I had the second surgery, I met someone, and he had contacts with the news, and he got me on the news. But I didn't get on the news until a year later. It was a year after the incident. And at that time, I just had to just kind of get myself together and say, okay, I know this is the only way you're going to get help. If you don't expose this situation, because only people that knew me knew about this. And I wanted them to do something. And I had already been waiting a year, and now I'm facing a second surgery. I expected to heal from the first surgery and go back to work. They had already told me my rehabilitation would be a year. So when I found out I needed surgery again, I was devastated to have to start that process over. And in the meantime, they still hadn't done anything.
Okay.
So I just...
Okay. Let me just give you a minute to gather your thoughts. Let me just ask you one question as we move this on just a little bit. And we really are understanding of just how emotional this must be for you as you relive that trauma and torture all over again. One of your statements, as Denmom pointed out just a while ago, was, "Until I get better, my circumstances won't get any better." I want you to tell me, tell our listeners, tell the audience, tell anybody that's listening, what is it that you were able to do before these injuries were put upon you that you're not able to do now, as a woman, as a mother? Take us, just tell us a little bit. That gives us an understanding.
I did everything before this incident. I had that surgery on my shoulder the year before. It was just a labrum tear. The only thing I couldn't do with my arm was put my arm all the way back behind my back. But I could raise things. I could pick things up. I went to work 2 months after that incident. So, it was a quick little thing, and I was back to work. So I did everything. But now I couldn't do anything. Before that, I was dancing. That day, I had driven 4 hours total on the road. I can't even be on the road now for an hour. It's just the pain and the nerve damage combined, or the pain from the nerve damage too combined, is just so debilitating that now simple things are so difficult for me. Going to the grocery store, when this happened, I was 38 years old. I'm riding a little cart around the store like an old lady. People give me some of the dirtiest looks sometimes because you looking at me, you can't tell something's wrong with me. So I'm riding the cart around. I can't push the bass cart because I have my days where I'm feeling so bad already, and I need to be able to do things that make me feel normal. So I'll try to walk through the store and get one of the baby carts, and then halfway through the store I can't get back to the door and my son has to help me. Those things like that make me so upset. I can't change my own sheets. I can't mop my floor. everything, because from the time I wake up, if I'm not in debilitating pain when I wake up, at some point I get there just from moving around, just from doing little stuff, because your whole body is connected. And the pain is in my neck, it's in my shoulder, it's all around my scapula, and I just have a constant pulling from back in this area from my latissimus dorsi. I have this constant burning kind of pulling thing, and everything is spasmed up all the time. So
Antoinette, may I say something real fast? Antoinette, maybe we were speaking last evening, and I think something that really bears stating is, I have my chronic illness and chronic pain stuff. You have this, result of your attack and all of that. And I just really want to stress for both of us and everyone else that's living with some kind of chronic condition or the survivor of victimization, that isn't it just so taxing that it's not something that just goes away. You wake up one day, as it were, and you find your life is upside down, that the basics are not so easy, and it gets to that point where your friends and family wonder, why can't you just come out to this thing? It's just so easy. And you're like, I can't come out of my bed. And it gets to the point where people even stop asking you to come because they feel that. But people who haven't experienced it, they don't necessarily understand that it is such a process, and your life really does change emotionally and physically for the rest of your life after that point. And you have to reframe your entire way of being, right?
Yes, I've never had chronic pain in any way. I'm a push through it kind of girl anyway. So I'm one of those people that's just like, okay, this happened. You grieve today and you get over it. And I've tried to do that so many times in this case, but I just keep getting worse. My physical has gotten so much worse. I wasn't like this in the beginning. When it first happened, I could still walk. I wasn't having trouble walking and things like that. Over time, I guess just from the injury just staying there and my arm hanging and all of those kinds of things, I guess it just got worse. And suddenly I started having problems with motor skills. And I didn't understand that. And that's really scary for me, because obviously walking is important to me. Walking and working and this whole thing, I just want to get back to my life, but I can't get back to my life because I can't get well. So this third surgery that I need, which is what's really so hurtful in this situation to me. It's not even that he attacked me, what he did to me, because I know that there are bad people in the world. There's always been bad people in the world, and things happen to everybody. Things happen. But the way the city handled this, the way the legal part of it was handled for me when I followed all the rules, and here's this situation where you have a 911 call, you have a video, and you have somebody that was in the car with the child. I called the police, and they didn't. They are the ones that have made this so much harder and so much worse for me, because to me it should just be very easy for you to just do the right thing. In this case, just do the right thing.
I hear that.
So I can move on with my life. And they haven't let me do that. So I'm left to struggle and figure out how I'm going to pay for these surgeries. I borrowed $50,000 surgery. I shouldn't be in this position. So now I'm on the internet begging people for a benefit for surgery. How did I get here? It doesn't make any sense.
We're going to catch up on this story, and we may even invite you back at the end of the month when we tie a lot of this stuff up, because I still don't think
I could hear her talk forever.
Yeah.
I could.
And I still don't think. Hang on a minute. I still don't think that we've covered all the bases that we wanted to cover today. 2 hours does go absolutely extremely fast. And I've got one more. 1 second, David. I've got one more question to ask you before we kind of try and get everybody on their final thoughts. And I'm still fully understanding just how emotional this is for you. And I don't want to add any additional stress to what you're probably going through already.
I cry every single day. It's okay. I cry several times a day. I have many breakdowns.
At the beginning, we talked about your growing up, your values, your principles, your family, your thoughts, your fears, your concerns, and your lack of worry about, and also respect for authority, the fact that you dated police officers, the fact that you were brought up to respect authority and do the right thing, the fact that you weren't part of any social media, you didn't watch much news, you didn't pay attention. The only things in activism or Black Lives Matter that you knew anything about was Rodney King and Trayvon Martin, and you didn't believe that police just went out and harassed people for no reason, and your trust was right up there with somebody who had lived an absolutely upright life and had never actually interacted with anything too negative whatsoever. Now, having gone through everything that you've gone through, all that you've experienced, and the battles that you're still going through, where is your elements of trust now? What is your thinking now? When you hear about these stories being put out on TV and social media about Sandra Bland, about Tamir Rice, about John Crawford and stuff like that, what is your thinking? What is your belief now? And how do you move on with yourself and keep putting yourself out there now that you know what you know?
As I see now that I'm on social media, it's just I see cases every day. It's like somebody new every day, and I'm so affected. I'm so affected by it. When Eric Garner's when the verdict came in for about his the officer not being indicted, I literally mourned in this house, just cried, because I thought his case was just so clear-cut wrong, and that no way he wouldn't get justice. His family wouldn't get justice. And for me, when I see all of these cases of these people and the officers get off, it kills my spirit. Because how could I possibly get justice when these people are dead and they get no justice? And I'm just I can't even tell you how it makes me feel. It hurts me so bad to see this happening over and over and over, and all the horror stories that people just tell me now because I put myself out here like this. I can't remember the rest of your question. I'm sorry.
That's fine. We're going to try and wrap it up in a minute. I just want to play. You guys are going to have to bear with me for 30 seconds. We've got one more Black History Moment, and I'll be right back with a roundup from all of our guests for tonight.
Did you know that Rosa Parks was not the first person to refuse to give up her bus seat in the era of segregation? In fact, Ms. Claudette Colvin was arrested for the very same thing a full 9 months before her at only 15 years of age. Her bravery ultimately helped to bring an end to the Montgomery bus boycott. She appeared as the final witness to testify when the case reached federal court, where bus segregation was declared unconstitutional. Now you know.
Now you know. Claudette Colvin was the first person to refuse to vacate her seat. It wasn't Rosa Parks, and that's our Black History Moment that we're going to coming close to ending the show with. Let's move to Denmom. Denmom.
Oh my! As I said, I could just hear her speak all day, and I can't even believe we're at the time we're at with this. There's so much here, and I think drawing off of the last bit that I was thinking of and speaking on, I think it's so essential. It's so essential that this medical care be such the priority. I mean, obviously, the lack of justice is always a priority. That's what we talk about every week on this program. But in this specific case, this woman, Antoinette, you have such grace and such courage, and you're so well spoken. And I just so desperately, if what I've got going on is something that could be addressed by getting, a surgeon and cut on and recuperate over a month or two and just be fine, I'd be all over it. And you can do that. So I want to see that this happens, and I want to see everyone who can possibly do what they can for your GoFundMe. If there are surgeons in our listenership, if there's anyone who knows a surgeon in our listenership, please, issuestodayradio@gmail.com. We are trying so hard to mobilize for this lovely woman, Antoinette. And in addition to that, I just can't stress enough that, these situations, they are so very common. As she just said, they're so very common, and there's so many cases out there, and we are on a mission, all of us here at Team Den Mom, to take victimhood back out of the vacuum to humanize each and every individual case, as we speak every week about the dignity of the individual, whether it be a homeless individual or a victim of a crime or brutality or something like that. There are stories and lives, just as we've discovered today, and they're meaningful because before anyone was a hashtag, they were a person, and to this day they still are, whether in truth or in memory, and I myself can't forget that, and I don't wish anyone else to ever, and I will say it, and I will say it, and I will say it again every week if I have to, until that is how people think about this.
Okay, thank you very much, Den Mom. Let's go over to Alex. Alex, I just want you to wrap it up. I know we're coming up close towards the end, and I also want to give Antoinette some time to give out some information on where they can find out how they can help her. So, Alex, what is your final thought on this, just for today's show?
You know, my final thoughts here, first of all, are with Antoinette. May God continue to give you the strength not to, dwell into what they did to you, but to make you an activist, a person for speaking out against this. You are not alone. Hopefully the other Uncle Toms and Tio Juans that are out there will see that, hey, this could happen to me one day, and I shouldn't be thinking that, this only happens to other people. And so for me, it's a never evolving, changing here of time. We're living at a very unique time in history. We are now dealing with the national topic of institutional racism. And institutional racism is something that is gripping this country, that's causing us to be very much on the fringe of revolution here in the United States, where we can very well become just like the West Bank and many of these other areas where violence continues to be the norm, because the people are tired of this happening. And because there is an element out there called white supremacy, we need to be able to combat it. Not in the physical sense. We would love to be able to do it in the sense of Martin Luther King. But, sometimes, we cannot continue to allow them to treat our women like this. And all we can do is continue to do research, to do our studying, and most of all, to support the victims of those who have been killed by the police. You're lucky to be alive here, Antoinette. You could have been very easily like Sandra Bland and so many other beautiful women who have been taken away from us. And so for that, we're very happy to have had you here. And so can't wait to be talking to you in the future. And thank you all very much, and to the people out there around the world who want to have some common sense.
We are having trouble getting Dr. David Murray back online again. He's obviously having problems where he is with the connection. So I'm going to hand this time over before we wrap up the whole show to Antoinette so that she can actually give details of where her GoFundMes are and where her Facebook pages are and what people can do to help you. Antoinette, the floor's yours. The call is yours. Go ahead.
My GoFundMe is it's GoFundMe.com/Antoinette Houston. My name is spelled ANTWYNETTE Houston, HOUSTON. My Twitter is Antoinette H. Facebook is also Antoinette Houston. And you can get anything, see whatever you'd like to see or donate or in all three of those places.
Okay. We are going back to Denmum.
My God, I'm so overwhelmed. I really am. Pardon me. I try to be on point, and right now I'm just so captivated. I can't, and emotional. I can't even rap as usual. But I just want to stress that this month is going to be a continuing emotional roller coaster of real Black lives, and that Antoinette, I can't thank you enough for your courage and your grace on this program, and to have come to us and to just to be so very, very compelling. And I just, with the gratitude that I have and the Team Den Mother in general has for you, and just trying to boost your story. I wish you all the best, and we're going to help see to it that you get what justice can be got and what help can be got for you, because it's so essential just to your life and to everyone, the symbol of it, if nothing else, that it can get better,
Thank you. I'd like to tell people I have I have an injury in a really rare spot. My latissimus dorsi and teres minor and teres major is what is injured. So I need pretty special surgery. It couldn't be just anyone. I wish it could be, but I need more of a surgeon that is capable of doing reconstructive surgery, as well as one who's seen an injury in that area. They've only known about 10 or 12 cases of people who've had an injury in this area, and they were all sports injuries. So if that helps anybody as far as what I need, I wanted to be really specific about the type of it's a very, very special surgery that I need, a reconstructive surgery for muscles.
Antoinette, your bravery in coming forward is a beacon for those of us who may be isolated and having a hard time finding the strength to carry on and keep fighting and healing. And something that's really come out of your story, which I feel is absolutely phenomenal, and a great awareness and understanding of what it is that we fight. And I think Alex, I'm going to bring Alex back in a minute, just for a couple of minutes, just before we close up, is that hearing your story, the type of person you were, the life that you led, the actuating moment that took place that was forever to scar and change your life, proves one thing, that no one is immune to this type of attack.
No one.
There are no favorites to this. Some people, and as you quite rightly pointed out at the beginning, you said that there was nobody that you knew that kind of got into that kind of limelight, and those that did, that had a shady character anyway, they were more likely to be subjected to this kind of behavior, because that was the lifestyle and the lifestyle choices that they were making that put them on the radar. But
I didn't think this could happen to me.
but you weren't on the radar. You weren't a drug addict. You weren't a gangbanger. You weren't a criminal. You weren't a prostitute. You weren't any of the things that would have put someone like you on the police radar. And yet, on this night at 3:30 in the morning, traveling back from a funeral in Indianapolis, on your way home to Kentucky, stopping off in Louisville for a donut, you was to meet your moment of hell, and still struggling to come back from that. But
it has changed my life. Yes,
absolutely.
My life.
But going to Alex, this is not unique, though, is it? Are you there, Alex?
Yes, I'm right here. I'm listening.
Yeah,
I'm listening to you. What's your question?
Yeah, this is not unique. Having somebody that's not on the police radar all of a sudden finding themselves subjected into this police brutality, it's not unique.
I'm sorry, you came kind of broken up here. Can you repeat that one more time, just
Okay.
so I totally understand the question?
What we're talking about here is that with the lifestyle choices that Antoinette was living, she wasn't on the police radar. Yet on this cold night, on this night of 3:30 in the morning, on her way home from a funeral, here she is subjected into this whole thing of police brutality. But police brutality for people that was not on the police radar is not unique, is it?
No, it's not. This happens to people every single day. I just want to make sure I clarify that. The police do not discriminate when they see a person of dark skin color, and it has been going on for the longest here. I'm glad we're finally drawing attention to this. This is a case where the United States government needs to step in, the DOJ. We're calling on the, U.S. Attorney General, and also the FBI to come into Louisville to check out what the heck is happening and what's going on. This is such a blatant, obvious display of racism. Okay, this is not even anything close to what they call the implicit bias, because this is just direct discrimination. This woman was targeted because of her skin, and until we become, more acutely aware of that as a society, then we will never get any better. So I hope that answers that. And again, thank you very much for having me here.
That's fine, Antoinette. How will you move on from this? What's your next plan of action?
My next plan of action, my deposition is coming up. My civil case is moving forward, but I am still pushing for criminal prosecution of Scott Sturgeon. I have to reinvent myself every day and get up and do a little self-talk in the mirror, cry a little bit, and keep it moving. I am not dead, so I have to just keep pushing my story, because my life is important, as mundane as it may be to a lot of other people. It's the most important thing in the world to me, and I will not give up on justice. I want justice.
Denmon, we've looked at doing shows for this particular month, which is Black History Month. And this particular story caught our eye, and we were absolutely captivated by it and wanted to do it. Is there anything else that you want to add as to what's come out of this story and where we go forward with our plans on issues today and Team Den Mom in particular?
I think in the same way as in the special reports, the call to action to do however small the thing may be that you can offer to someone in need, to consider that, to offer it. I think that the bravery of Antoinette this day and every other day and every other program she's done is very illustrative, and I both challenge and extend comfort and condolences to all victims, all families of victims, anyone. This is the Team Den Mom plan. This is Love Wins. Please, if you have a story, use this beacon of courage. Use Antoinette's grace and bravery as a way to reach out. If you need help, if you wish to have your story told, find us, at Issues Today Show on Twitter, Issues Today Radio at gmail.com, Team Den Mother. We're all there. We're ready and we're waiting, and we want to speak with you. Even if you don't want to be on the program, we want to hear from you, just so that you've got someone in your corner that you didn't have yesterday. Please.
Absolutely. And once again, I want to thank all our guests. We've not been able to get David back in for his final thoughts, which we miss. And we hope that everything's okay his end, and we'll see him again next week. We want to thank Alex and Antoinette in particular for coming on this show and sharing her story with us, as painful as it has been, as emotional as we have, the roller coaster that we've been taken on this particular show. Just to advise you that next week we're visiting the story of Tamir Rice. We've got Greg Greer on, who's an advocate for the Rice family, and we're going to be looking at the story of Tamir Rice. And I just want to thank each and everybody that's joined in, listened, contributed, and asked their questions. And we look forward to being with you again next week at the same time, same place on Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio. And this is us saying a great farewell. And we wish you luck in everything that you do, Antoinette. And I know we're going to speak again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
World Jam Global Radio. This is Clarity.